Hello, I'm Bakir Sanova and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Egypt and Red Cross join search for hostage bodies in Gaza. ASEAN Summit enters second day, focuses on economic ties, trade and security. And Donald Trump continues Asia tour in Japan for high-level talks. Good afternoon. We start with the Middle East. Israeli hostages continue to be released from hospital, with the latest group returning home on Sunday after spending several days receiving treatment. The three were kidnapped from the Nova Desert Festival on October the 7th, 2023, and were sometimes held together during their 2 years in captivity in Gaza. They were welcomed by large cheering crowds waving Israeli flags in their hometowns. The hospital says it will continue to accompany them and their families, giving them all the support they need. As part of the ceasefire agreement, Hamas has said it will return all the hostages it abducted, but the remains of the 13 are still in the enclave. In a related news, Egypt and the Red Cross have officially joined the search for the bodies of deceased hostages in Gaza, following recent approval by Israeli authorities to allow both teams to operate beyond the so-called Yellow Line, the boundary marking Israeli military control in the Gaza Strip.
Israel has allowed Egypt and Red Cross teams into Gaza as search for hostage bodies widens on Sunday. The teams were permitted to move beyond the so-called Yellow Line. That line marks the Israeli military's pullback zone in the Gaza Strip.
In full cooperation with Israel, the Prime Minister approved the entry of an Egyptian team into the Gaza Strip to assist in searching for our remains of our deceased hostages. Now, this is a technical team only, and none of these personnel are in the military. Now, the Red Cross and the Egyptian team are allowed entry beyond the IDF's Yellow Line position into Gaza territory to conduct the search for our hostages.
In the shades of Israel's decision, Red Cross and Hamas meet in attempt to locate bodies of deceased hostages in Gaza. They reportedly met members of Hamas's shadow unit in Rafah, who escorted them to sites believed to contain Israeli remains, according to Hamas-linked media. The latest development comes amid ongoing efforts to implement elements of a fragile agreement concerning hostages and post-war arrangements in the Gaza Strip. Up until now, Israel had not permitted the entry of such teams into Gaza. So far, Israel has repatriated the remains of 195 Palestinians, while Hamas has returned 15 bodies of Israeli hostages.
In a major surprise, a U.S. Navy helicopter and fighter jet crashed in separate incidents over the South China Sea on Sunday. Both accidents happened within the same half hour during routine operations, according to the Navy's Pacific Fleet. All crew members were safely rescued, and investigations have been launched to determine the causes of both crashes. The fighter jet marks at least the fourth $60 million aircraft the Navy has lost this year. In keeping with that news, Russia says it has successfully tested its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile, a weapon President Vladimir Putin claims can pierce any defense shield. The announcement marks what Putin called crucial testing of a missile that once seemed impossible to build. According to a senior Russian general, the Burevestnik, also known to NATO as Skyfall, flew for 15 hours and covered 14,000 kilometers during its test on October the 21st. The test follows as President Donald Trump increases pressure on Russia to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine and threatens new sanctions. Now, NATO member Lithuania closed the Vilnius airport on Sunday after several objects believed to be helium balloons entered its airspace, the fourth such incident this week. The airport was also shut down on Saturday after weather balloons crossed into Lithuanian airspace from neighboring Belarus. Authorities say the balloons are used by smugglers to transport contraband cigarettes, but they also blame Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko for failing to stop the crossings. Lithuania's National Security Commission is scheduled to meet to assess the situation. Malaysia is keeping global economic and political issues high on its agenda within ASEAN. On the summit's second day, tariffs and cross-border scam centers are up for discussion.
It is the second day that Malaysia is hosting the 47th ASEAN Summit. First day of summit showed serious political and economic outcomes for world. The US and China reached preliminary deal to ease trade tensions. Timor-Leste officially became the 11th member of ASEAN. Cambodia and Thailand signed a historic peace deal in Kuala Lumpur, witnessed by US President Donald Trump and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, to end border hostilities and restore peace. And today, in the second day of ASEAN Summit, major outcomes continue to emerge. Top officials from China and the leaders of Brazil, Canada, the European Council and the 11-strong ASEAN bloc is working to solidify economic partnerships and hammer out trade pacts.
Thank you.
ASEAN leaders on Monday met their East Asian counterparts at the ASEAN +3 summit in Kuala Lumpur. The talks focused on tariffs and cross-border scam center crimes, alongside a series of trade and bilateral meetings.
In particular, transnational crime, centered around organized crime networks such as scam centers, has recently threatened the safety and daily lives of countless people. Korea plans to strengthen its response system in close cooperation with ASEAN NAPO to prevent the spread of transnational crime and, furthermore, eradicate these networks.
Japan is currently serving as the chair of the Trilateral Summit among Japan, China and South Korea. With the upcoming summit in mind, Japan hopes to continue working closely with China and South Korea to promote forward-looking cooperation that will also benefit ASEAN countries.
The three-day summit will conclude on October 28th, leaving regional leaders to assess progress on security, trade and diplomatic cooperation, and to plan the next steps for ASEAN's role on the global stage.
Remaining in the region, Cambodia began withdrawing troops from its border with Thailand Sunday night after signing an extended ceasefire in Malaysia, with US President Donald Trump helping mediate. Footage shows soldiers loading tanks onto trucks as part of the first phase of the pullback. The agreement builds on a truce from 3 months ago, ending 5 days of fighting that killed at least 48 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. Focusing on trade, China and the United States have reached a preliminary consensus on key issues, including extending their trade truce, fentanyl control and export regulations. The announcement comes after 2 days of talks in Kuala Lumpur between Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top negotiator Li Chenggang and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer, held on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit. Li did not provide further details on the agreed terms. U.S. President Donald Trump said he's confident of reaching a deal with Chinese President Xi Jinping, who he's expected to meet soon. U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived in Japan, marking the second stop of his Asia diplomacy tour. He's scheduled to meet Japan's first female Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, for the first time, where discussions are expected to focus on Japan's planned $550 billion investment in the United States. Trump will also meet Emperor Naruhito at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo, their first encounter in 6 years since Trump's previous presidency. Argentina's midterm elections have strengthened President Javier Milei's position in Congress. The victory gives him more leverage to push ahead with his economic reforms.
Argentina's far-right president Javier Milei claimed a decisive victory in Sunday's midterm elections. According to initial results, his party, La Libertad Avanza, won 41% of the nationwide vote. The party boosted its lower house seats from 37 to 64 and won 13 of 24 Senate seats, strengthening Milei's mandate for deep spending cuts and economic reforms.
We will not only defend the reforms that have been made, but we will also promote the reforms that are still needed to achieve that future. We want to be a country that grows into the Argentina we should never have stopped being, to make Argentina great again.
The victory was praised by US President Donald Trump, who had previously threatened to cut a $40 billion aid package if Milei's coalition faltered. However, the Peronist opposition, including Buenos Aires province governor Axel Kicillof, struck a defiant tone.
Milei and the government are mistaken if they celebrate this election result, in which 6 out of 10 Argentines have said they disagree with the model they are proposing. They are also mistaken if they ignore the situation our people are going through, which is one of enormous suffering, marked by job losses and a decline in economic activity, where companies are closing every day, where the most vulnerable are suffering more and more every day.
Former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner appeared on her balcony in Buenos Aires to greet supporters as crowds expressed concern over the election results.
It is not a productive project that provides jobs for people. It is a project based on debt, on taking on debt. I do not see it as favourable for the country, but that is democracy, and this is the result.
We have to be tolerant and respect the majority vote. Unfortunately, we have to prepare ourselves for situations that are going to be quite painful.
Despite opposition warnings, Milei vowed to consolidate reforms over the next 2 years, leveraging his strengthened presence in Congress.
Now moving to Africa, where at least 4 people have been killed in violent protests in Cameroon. The unrest comes as the country's election board prepares to announce the results of a presidential vote.
At least 4 people have been killed after protesters and police clashed in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. The unrest broke out a day before the country is set to announce results from a highly contested presidential election. Hundreds of supporters of opposition candidate Issa Chiroma defied a protest ban and took to the streets, accusing President Paul Biya of trying to rig the vote. Provisional results indicate Biya is poised to extend his 43-year rule, sparking anger and frustration among demonstrators.
The Cameroonians have died. They have died. 43 years is a lot. We want change. We have to respect democracy. The power is in the people. It's the people who decide.
We're not here to fight with them. 43 years in power. We're tired. What is this? We're citizens.
The opposition says authorities have detained about 30 politicians and activists linked to Chiroma, who claims to have won 54.8% of the votes against Biya's 31.3%. The government has dismissed allegations of irregularities and urged citizens to wait for the official results, which the Constitutional Council is expected to announce on Monday. Biya, who is 92 years old, is already the world's oldest currently serving president, having held power since 1982. Another 7-year term would see him in office until nearly 100 years old.
Now authorities and residents across Jamaica are racing to prepare as Hurricane Melissa strengthens, with forecasters warning of record-breaking winds, torrential rains and deadly flooding.
Hurricane Melissa is barreling toward Jamaica and could become the strongest storm the island has ever faced, prompting urgent preparations as catastrophic flooding and landslides loom. In Kingston, residents and workers were seen filling sandbags, stocking supplies and reinforcing rooftops as strong winds swept coastal areas.
As you can see, we're here at bag some sand. This is what we do, bag sand, prepare for the customer. Some people, when them come, them buy, block off them doorway, them gateway. Some buy for put on them house top, keep down the zinc from lifting. So it's all good here, you know.
While locals work to secure their homes, tourists are also feeling the storm's impact, facing disrupted travel plans and multiple flight changes.
So we were on vacation for like 4 days, and we decided to wait it out and not cut the vacation because we just hoped the weather would change. It didn't change, and they switched our flight 4 times, and so now we're just hoping that they don't switch the flight again.
The U.S. National Hurricane Center said Hurricane Melissa had strengthened into a major Category 4 storm, with the potential to reach Category 5 by Sunday night, and is likely to hit Jamaica's southern coast Tuesday morning. Prime Minister Andrew Holness urged residents to take the threat seriously. A hurricane warning is in effect for Jamaica, with watches issued for southern Haiti and parts of eastern Cuba. Meteorologists warn the slow-moving storm could dump up to 80 centimetres of rain, triggering life-threatening floods and landslides across the region.
Welcome back to A News Now. Let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has invited the leaders of Central Asian countries to attend the Central Asia-United States Summit. Central Asia-U.S. Summit is scheduled to be held in Washington on November 6. Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev sent a letter of gratitude to Donald Trump for the invitation to the summit. He noted that he shares the main goals of Donald Trump's domestic and foreign policy, in particular supporting traditional values based on common sense principles, as well as the American leader's desire to maintain peace and security. Gyumri Mayor Vardan Gukasyan faces new charges over statements deemed calls to renounce Armenia's sovereignty. The remarks made at the Anti-Corruption Court in September referenced forming alliances with other countries. His lawyers say the charges are politically motivated. Earlier this month, Gukasyan and several others were detained in a bribery case. The arrest sparked clashes with supporters, prompting police and special forces to intervene. Meanwhile, a separate investigation into mass riots has led to 33 arrests. Looking to diplomacy, as Azerbaijan servicemen are taking part in the Nusret 2025 invitation exercise, an international naval drill hosted by Turkey in the Gulf of Saros, the Ministry of Defense said. The exercise involves naval and air units from NATO and Turkey, as well as forces from the Coast Guard Command and observers from multiple countries. Its goal is to improve the planning, execution and evaluation of mine warfare operations, while strengthening cooperation among participating forces. Alongside Azerbaijan, a total of 44 countries are taking part. Turning to Central Asia, Kazakhstan is leading Central Asia in attracting foreign investment. The latest UN data shows that the country remains ahead of its regional peers, drawing billions of dollars in new projects despite global economic uncertainty. Fariza Kalimurzuna reports from Almaty.
Kazakhstan is reinforcing its position as one of the most attractive investment destinations in Central Asia, despite the ongoing turbulence in the global economy. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the country became a regional leader in major greenfield projects in 2024. Out of 5 global initiatives worth more than $1 billion each launched in landlocked nations, 4 were implemented in Kazakhstan. The total volume of foreign direct investment reached $17.2 billion last year. Economists say these figures reflect the resilience of the national economy and the growing confidence of international partners in Kazakhstan's long-term potential. Over the past year, 45 new investment projects have been launched across the country, creating more than 6,000 jobs. The largest share of foreign capital went into mining, manufacturing and trade, but there is also growing interest in renewable energy, food production, business services and research and development. Russia remains the top investor with $4.1 billion, followed by South Korea and China. These countries are developing large-scale industrial and infrastructure projects, from gas processing plants and logistics hubs to production of rare earth metals. Experts note that Kazakhstan's strategic location at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, as well as its improving business climate, continue to attract new investors. The government has also focused on diversifying the economy and creating a more transparent regulatory environment to support sustainable growth. Farizah Kalimurzyna, Almaty, A News.
Now, tensions ease in Turkey's decades-long conflict with Kurdish militants as the PKK takes a major step toward disarmament. The group's withdrawal marks a new phase in efforts to end one of the country's longest-running insurgencies.
The Kurdistan Workers' Party said on Sunday the move is part of a disarmament process coordinated with the government. The group urged Ankara to take steps allowing it to enter politics legally. The PKK has waged an insurgency against the Turkish state since 1984. It decided in May to disarm after a call from its jailed leader, Abdullah Öcalan. The conflict has killed more than 40,000 people. In a statement from its base in Iraq's Kwandal Mountains, the PKK said the withdrawal aims to build a free, democratic and brotherly life. It asked the government to pass laws that would allow its political integration. Ömer Çelik, spokesperson for Turkish president, said the move supports the goal of a terror-free Turkey. He added that it will help guide a parliamentary commission working on the legal side of the process. The PKK is mainly based in northern Iraq, where Turkey continues to strike its positions. The group now seeks more rights and limited autonomy for Kurds instead of full independence.
In Turkey's mountainous village of Ziyaret, one family's beekeeping success is bringing new life to a once deserted conflict zone. Let's have a look.
In the steep and quiet village of Ziyaret in Turkey, one family's business is quite literally buzzing with life. İsmet Akoyun and his family run a beekeeping operation that produces pure, additive-free honey shipped to customers across the country. Akoyun fled his homeland in 1993 amid terror-related evacuations. After the area was secured through successful military operations, he and his family returned permanently in 2012. He rebuilt the home that had been destroyed and began a new chapter, beekeeping.
The village remained empty for a while. I returned to support my family's livelihood. We tried to make use of our land with our own means. Before it was restricted for security reasons, we couldn't travel freely and had to get special permission. In 2012, when the road to our village was built, I constructed a concrete house. After that, we planted our fields. Since the honey here is of exceptional quality, I started beekeeping after building our home. Now, we have nearly 500 traditional and modern hives. Our livelihood depends on caring for the bees as a family.
The Akoyuns are the only family living in the village, perched 2,500 metres above sea level. Their thriving business produces up to 2.5 tonnes of honey each year. İsmet hopes more families will return to bring renewed life to the community.
Life in the village used to be great and it was densely populated. Many people lived here. Living alone in the village can be a bit dull. It gets lonely with no one around. If everyone came back, the village would be livelier and productivity here would increase.
With the help of his wife and 5 children, Ismet continues to live in harmony with nature, surrounded by steep mountains in the peaceful village of Turkey's Bitlis province.
Welcome back to A News. Now we again continue with Turkey, where the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, has announced that it's pulling its militants out of Turkish territory as part of a broader disarmament process coordinated with Ankara. The group says it hopes this step will pave the way for legal political participation and the new era of dialogue. Ankara, meanwhile, has welcomed the move, calling it a step toward a terror-free Turkey through Turkish operations against the PKK positions in northern Iraq continue. The coming period will likely define whether this shift leads to lasting peace or renewed tensions over the Kurdish operation. To help us understand the implications of this withdrawal and what it could mean for Turkey's domestic politics, regional security and Kurdish operations, we are joined by Dr. Furkan Halit Yolcu, faculty member at Sakarya University, joining us from Sakarya, Turkey. Dr. Furkan, thank you very much for joining us on A News.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
To start, how significant is the PKK's announcement to pull its militants out of Turkey at this stage?
I mean, it's a second part of the process that we are experiencing so far. First part was to clinch a deal with PKK on a bureaucratic level to agree on PKK releasing their arms and stopping the fight and having a ceasefire between PKK and the Turkish army. And the second phase was about the PKK leaving the Turkish soil all in all. So we are on the second phase of the deal that's been in practice for a couple of months now. We have seen a process where PKK put down their weapons symbolically in a fire and destroying their weapons and machine guns, and now they are withdrawing all of the militants in the Turkish soil to outside of the territory, probably to Iraq and Syria, and they have given a press release about the withdrawal of all of the PKK militants from the Turkish soil. But there is also a civilian part of PKK as well. There are civilian cells living in the country. But what we have seen in the video is the armed PKK militants living in Turkish soil. But there is also a civilian part to it, and we don't really know if there is the civilian part of PKK, which was named KCK, is still alive within the Turkish soil and operative or not. So that's an important question that is waiting to be answered as well.
Dr. Yolcu, how should we interpret the reference to Abdullah Öcalan's call from prison? Is his influence still decisive within the organization?
Well, if it wasn't, we wouldn't be here today. So we can say we can practically say it's very valid that what Abdullah Öcalan is thinking about PKK's future. So it's very valid to say that he has still authority upon PKK and he's still capable in leading very important decisions on PKK operations. So some of the people thought that Öcalan lost his voice in PKK and lost his authority over PKK, but it was unproven. It was proven otherwise. Let's put it that way, because now we see that within Öcalan's initiative, the Turkish government was successful to completely demilitarize PKK within Turkish soil, and now there seems to be no PKK threat within the Turkish territory. So it's practically proven as well that Öcalan still holds authority as the ideological leader and the operational leader of PKK.
Dr. Yolcu, Ankara has welcomed the move, but with cautious language. What conditions might the Turkish government be expecting before committing to deeper engagement?
my concerns about the civilian part of PKK still valid for the Ankara government as well, because we know that PKK militants were really narrowed down. They were really struggling in Turkey to survive and be active in terms of military conflict. So they were already very weak, but now they are out of the soil. The next thing comes is that they are losing the cell structure, losing the social structure that is more covert, that is not very open, and they don't really dress like the militants. They are like civilians, and they do sometimes handle and deliver terror operations for PKK within Turkish civil atmosphere. So that's, I think, one of the concerns of Ankara government is whether the KCK organization under PKK is completely has been dysfunctional, or is it still some lingering in Turkish soil somewheres to waiting for the right opportunity to create another crisis and terrorize people, terrorize Turkish people when the time arrives. That's the main concern, I think, Ankara is keeping on the other side of the table.
The PKK says it wants to enter politics legally. What steps legally and institutionally would be required to make this possible? And could this lead to the emergence of a new Kurdish political party or the strengthening of existing Kurdish-aligned parties in Turkey?
It's really hard to imagine that PKK separately and independently opens up and creates a new party within the Turkish parliamentary system. But the current mostly Kurdish-led party in Turkey is most of the time they were pointed to be in lines with PKK, working with PKK behind the curtains. And now that the Turkish state and the PKK has an agreement between them, it's not an obligation for the mostly Kurdish-led party, which is called BDP, in Turkey's parliamentary system, that they now can openly maybe invite some of the PKK members inside Turkey within legal limits that they can operate under political lines. But these individuals has to be not associated with terror activities. So they can be maybe members of PKK, but they shouldn't be committed crimes. They shouldn't be associated with any of the activities that PKK has led so far. So it's going to be hard to find these individuals, but there is a way. There is an open venue for those individuals to become political in the coming years. But I should say that it's going to be a very hard path, that these guys are welcome to the Turkish politics and they are going to be practically practicing, politics. It's going to be a very hard way to find these individuals and then implement them into the parties that are already established in the system.
Dr. Yolcu, the PKK has shifted from demanding full independence to calling for greater rights and limited autonomy. What changed strategically or ideologically?
For the last 10 years, for the last decade, the Turkish army has been pushing on PKK's militants, has been narrowing down the PKK life space within Turkey and within Syria and Iraq. So for these 10 years, PKK continued to lose blood, and it really costed them the manpower, costed them logistics and finances. So PKK came to a point that it couldn't operate with Turkish antagonism anymore. So it needed to have an agreement with the Turkish army and the Turkish government to be able to survive its future. So it's not that PKK changed its course within a day or within a week, but it's been a years of struggle that sort of bent PKK to its knees and made it to succumb to Turkish government's agreement details. Obviously, this also came with Öcalan's support for the peace agreement, because he also saw that PKK was really struggling within Turkish borders and within Iraq and Syria against the Turkish army. And this is not like a sudden change, but it's a fruit of a very long tactical plan that's been applied on the soil with boots on the ground.
So how might developments in Iraq and Syria, where Kurdish groups hold varying degrees of self-administration, influence Kurdish expectations in Turkey? And what are the major risks that could derail this disarmament process?
One of the major risks is YPG and its activity in Syria. If YPG comes in between PKK and Turkish government and terrorize the people that are on the border, or maybe terrorize the Syrian people and cause them to relocate to Turkish soil once again, this might come in between the PKK and Turkish government in terms of peace agreement, and this obviously is going to derail the peace process that we are observing right at the moment. In Iraq, I don't see any problems that might cause the whole process to derail. But in Syria, there is a serious threat to this peace process, which is YPG. And YPG is known to be very close with CENTCOM commanders and CENTCOM officials. So if United States wants to meddle in this peace process and to derail it, it might operationalize YPG, and it could easily cause another wave of conflict, which is gonna obviously scatter all of these peace clouds that's been guiding the peace process from the beginning.
Dr. Furkan Halit Yolcu, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us today. We appreciate your time and perspective on this important issue.
Thank you.
You're up to date with world news for the hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.